And welcome, Hoosier fans, to our first live interview here inside of the Assembly Call IU Sports discussion community. And it only seems fitting that our first interview guest is the same IU legend who is also well known for being Bob Knight's first recruit. And you know, that worked out pretty well, and I think today's discussion will too, because if you've heard this gentleman on recent episodes of Podcast on the Brink and the Hoosier Hysterics, you know that he is gregarious, he is energetic, and he's a remarkable storyteller. I'm thinking maybe it's because of all that good sleep he's been getting, which we'll talk to him about too. So I'm pleased to introduce my guest today. He is one of the best scorers to ever wear the cream and crimson. He played 3 seasons and won 3 Big Ten championships. He played in a Final Four, and he was a key member of the team that many longtime IU fans believe is the best team in IU history, even though they fell a couple games shy of winning it all thanks to an untimely injury. He is, of course, the great Steve Green.
Steve, thank you, Jerod. That's a heck of an introduction. I'm going to frame that one. I want that.
So go right next to
you touched the high points and left out the low points.
That's what we do.
But here. In this next hour, we'll touch the low points too. So don't worry.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Really have been looking forward to talking to you ever since I heard, some of those other conversations
Sure.
that you've done. And obviously just growing up, hearing about your career and, knowing how much of a great player you were and how much you meant at IU. I want to start though, I mentioned all the good sleep that you've been getting. And before we look back, I do want to start by having you get us caught up on what you've been up to of late, and also how you roped another offense first, defense optional IU legend into doing it with you.
Well, the easy answer to that one is like minds attract each other. So, yeah, I think he was the only guy that I heard Coach Knight talk about playing defense as poorly as I played it. But that's me. That's Kitchell. I always tell Kitchell and I always talk about the reason that we became such good shooters is we had no other redeeming qualities for the team. If we were out there clunking it, then you might as well sit down. So, we talk about pressure shooting. Hey, every shot was a pressure shot for me. If it doesn't go in, I might just get replaced because I'm not doing anything else out here. So anyway, but the first part of that, Brian and I came together to form a sleep company, Aurora, Specialty Sleep Clinic. But this has been about a 5 or 6 year project for us. Yeah. I've been in what we call dental sleep for about 15 years. And it's something that dentists can provide oral devices for people that have snoring or sleep apnea issues. And, I had a successful enough practice, but to the point where, I was tired of general dentistry. So I sold my general dentistry practice, and this is all I wanted to do. But I needed to see more people. It was breaking me up that this epidemic that we have with sleep and especially sleep apnea and snoring, and how that affects your overall health and things. There are way more Hoosiers that needed help than I was seeing or able to see. So got together. I actually was telling Joe Hillman, let me throw another guy in there, because let me tell you, you're going to find, Jerod, life's pretty simple for me. If you are from Indiana, went to Indiana, played basketball, any of those 3, but really if all 3, then we're kindred spirits. So anyway, so Joe, I'm watching my nephew pitch up here in Indianapolis. He was summer league or something like that. And I noticed that a kid came up to bat against him with a helmet on his back, and I go, oh gosh, hey, that is Zionsville. Hey, I wonder if Joe's here. Well, Joe's coaching. And so afterwards, I hadn't seen Joe in a while. And he said, hey, what are you doing? I was telling him, I want to do this thing with sleep, but I need to get in with some medical docs and all that. He goes, well, you need to talk to Brian Evans. And I go, oh, really? And he goes, oh yeah, Brian, that's a space that he'll help you with. So Brian and I had lunch almost 6 years ago now on this topic. And so ever since we've been partners in this and trying our best to figure out the best way to get the word out and also to treat the most people, the most Central Indiana Hoosiers that we could. And we've done the stats, and there are 1 million snorers around the Marion County, the donut. That's not the state of Indiana. That's 1 million snorers. And so we said, we've got to do something for snorers. You don't have, sleep apnea is a medical condition. Snoring is not considered one. but it's a terrible thing for relationships. It's terrible for your sleep.
My wife would agree.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's who we're after. Don't worry, but man, we're coming after your wife with our advertising, and she's going to be saying, "You get in there." That's the secret sauce. But nonetheless, we do both. We provide oral devices, and oral devices are here to stay. This is not Stevie making something up, and I didn't create the devices. There's been 20 years of research now, and there's a lot of good medicine behind this, especially when we're treating sleep apnea. And it's so many people are given CPAPs and they just say, I'm out. I can't use it. I don't like it. I'm not using it properly. But they don't know there's an alternative. And it's not only an alternative, it's a medically accepted alternative paid for by insurance companies and all that. So it's the real deal. But the snoring is where Brian's brain came in and said, hey, man, we got to get the word out to snorers. People will at least raise their hand about snoring. Sleep apnea, I don't know that you go to coffee, cocktail parties and say, hey, I've got sleep apnea. Aren't I fortunate? But snoring, the wives talk about it, and yada. So anyway, that's as quickly as I can tell you, because I can bore you for an hour on it.
Well, no, but one thing I do want to know is, so how do people actually engage with you on that? Do they need to come in, schedule an appointment, and then they can get the devices? And
right. We now have, for snoring, we have the only same day device. You come in at 10 o'clock and you'll leave at 11 o'clock with an oral device for snoring. And you have 7 days to use it without paying us. So you don't even, and that's all Brian's idea. It was like, hey, we got to do more, so that people get to try this, because when I make an oral device, or used to when I made an oral device for people, it's kind of like, hey, no, how do I know if it's going to work? And I go, well, here's what we do. You pay me all the money, and then I put it, make this for your mouth, and we hope it works, well, and I would know, it's probably going to work, but people didn't know it. So that's kind of the change was the, going after the snorers and giving them something that they can immediately use. But yeah, you can go online now at, aurorasleep.com, and that's Aurora, ARORA, and that's a story in of itself, that Brian and I, being guys, we didn't know what Aurora meant. When somebody pitched it to us and we took it home, and first thing he said to his wife, she goes, yeah, Sleeping Beauty. He went, oh, really?
I didn't know that either.
No, you're a guy. you just passed the rules to get into the guy club, but you failed for your daughter. She would. So anyway, but we took the U out, because everybody had Aurora. So anyway, it's aurorasleep.com, and you can make appointments online now.
And for folks who aren't in Central Indiana, like I live in Dallas, for example, is there a way for me to work with you virtually on something like that? Do you guys do virtual visits?
But don't worry, bud, we're coming.
All right, there we go.
We're coming. That's the whole idea, is to be. First, I want to make sure my Hoosiers are taken care of. All my buds around here. But then we're coming. Yeah, we're at. Franchising, things of that nature are on the table right now. But yeah, we just, there's not much we can do other than I can tell you who to go to in Dallas. He's a good friend of mine, Kent Smith. So there, I can plug. Dr.
There we
Kent,
go.
Look him up. Yeah. And he'll say, who's Steve Green again? Just tell him tall guy. All right.
Okay.
And, but nonetheless, there's some guys like him that are really, really good all over the country. And I, hope to be that person here, because I've done it for 15 years now. And it's, on the one hand, it's not brain surgery. On the other hand, it's critical to overall health. And so I myself have severe sleep apnea, and that's how I got started on it. Like I tell people, I treated, my first patient was my most favorite patient, and that's me, so, hey, what the heck? And then I started treating everybody in my family, which is typical, hey, I'm going to make my mistakes on them. And then I said, you know what, this works. So anyway, it's been a good journey, but it's something that I really am excited about. And it's not that I was no longer excited about general dentistry, but 33 years of putting in fillings, I think I got it down now. Okay, I got it. But the sleep thing is over in medical land, and that got me excited again. Hey, to kind of rub shoulders with physicians, sleep physicians, all kinds of physicians that are referring to us and us referring back, patients that are sleeping better and happy and healthier.
Well, it's such a great thing you're giving people. I mean, there's a few things more important than getting sleep. And it's such a cool story that, you teamed up with Brian Evans to do it. So it's great.
Yeah. And very honestly, Brian, has heard me say this and he kind of was like, you're kidding. I had always wanted to work with an IU basketball player in some kind of business. Cause because I was there from the early, the caveman era, but certainly with Coach Knight from day one. And it always was kind of good news, bad news. I said, none of us have ever tried to parlay, notoriety, the IU basketball connection into any kind of business success, not on a, certainly not advertising that or anything like that. So, but I'd always wanted to team up with some guys, one guy, two guys in a business venture, but there never was anything that I was able to offer. And then this came along and Brian, in the medical field and it took a while for him to kind of, get jazzed up about it when we found out, or when he found out that the number of people with undiagnosed sleep issues is 50 to 60 million Americans. It's like, oh my gosh, the pie is huge and we don't have to treat every one of them to be a successful company and change lives. So, that's so it's a dream come true for me to work with somebody. I'll tell Brian, it's like, he wasn't the guy I was thinking about, but I was thinking more along the line of somebody. I actually, I told him, hey, he's one of my favorite players. He wore 34. He shot all the time. I go, hey, my kind of guy. So we've been attached at the hip. He's young 34 and I'm old 34.
Yeah. So let's shift gears and talk about your career. And, like we were saying, I highly recommend the interviews you did with Hoosier Hysterics and with Podcast on the Brink. Those are great. I imagine a lot of the people who are listening to this have probably heard those interviews. But there's one story that I'd love for you to tell again that I want to get into, because I talked about how, you're so well known as being Bob Knight's first recruit. But what I didn't realize, and kind of the irony of that distinction, is that you actually came to IU in large part because you developed a relationship with Branch McCracken long before you even met Bob Knight, which was a really cool story. Can you kind of share how that all came about?
Yeah, it is interesting. And I actually first met Branch McCracken and his wife, Mary Jo, and the whole family at basketball camp. The first year that Branch had his Indiana University basketball camp, not in Bloomington, in Lake James, at Lake James in Gola, Indiana. And I actually lied about my age to get in because, I was tall enough, but you had to be 9 or something. And my dad, who was a basketball coach, was like, man, this is good enough reason to teach a kid how to lie. If you're going to do it for this is good. And, but the reason I had interest in those guys and in IU, and Branch McCracken knew all the players, my aunt and uncle were employees of IU. My uncle was a professor, School of Education, and my aunt was a graduate of IU and had, just always had IU stuff and, talked about all the players. And it just at a young age, I got really enamored with IU basketball. And that's where I first started watching the Van Arsdales, who were my heroes, those are the guys that I wanted to be like. In fact, I remember when I actually passed them on the scoring list or something, I was embarrassed. I was like, I ain't no Van Arsdale, those are, it had to do with, I played more games and all that. I know why, but it still is like, no, I can't do that. Those are my heroes and they're on a pedestal and that shouldn't happen. So anyway, so I was enamored with those guys and met them, at Branch's camp, but it was Branch that I always wanted to come back to. He told story. He was the best storyteller. Branch was just, and he always, boys, boys, boys. He started everything, boys, boys, boys. Then here comes a story, and it was just delightful. Then he had film, and he had Jimmy Rail up to talk to us about his 56-point games. And like Jimmy would remind you, I had 2 of them, not just one. I had 2 of them, And I thought, gosh, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to shoot that much. And I did. And so anyway, that was my introduction to IU. So I always followed IU. I told Tom the other day, Tom Bednarsdale, I was talking to him, and we talked about the Michigan game back in '65. I remember watching it on Channel 4, the fuzzy Channel 4, and Michigan was number one in the land, and IU was beating them, right, in regulation. Mm-hmm. And the crowd started going, "We're number one, we're number one." And it's like, from that day forward, I knew that was a curse, because Michigan comes back and beats IU, but it was that close, and I remember watching that game. So that's '65. So, I'm 12 years old, 11 or 12, but by that time I was hooked. I had all the guys' autographs, and I said, that's where I'm going to go play basketball.
Yeah.
So that was when I was 12, and Branch was still coach too.
Yeah. And look, and you came to IU, and like, as I mentioned in the introduction, you had a great career. Now you only got to play 3 seasons because at that time freshmen were ineligible.
Thank you for that. As I slide down the scoring list along with my 2 buds, the Arsdales, our 3 years.
Yeah. How does it make you feel to see these guys playing 4 years and all these extra games and passing you on the scoring list?
I held my school record, a high school record, for 50 years until this year. And Trey Kaufman, Wren, and Cooper Jacoby at Silver Creek both beat it, right? And I go, that was a 3-year. I didn't move in until my sophomore year there at Silver Creek, but no, it's like I got 2 more years of eligibility, 1 in high school, 1 in college left. So and now with the portal and the COVID and everything like that, it's crazy. Brian and I were just talking about, what are we going to do about record keeping and all that?
Man,
guys coming back. So you guys,
Jordan Bohannon's coming back to Iowa for like his 6th or 7th season. He's going to shatter all the games played records and stuff. It's like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but even Garza could come back to repeat his senior year, right? If he didn't want to go pro. Well, you think he might score a few more points, and no one will ever, again. But anyway, he probably would have broken Calvert Chaney's record, and I would not recognize it.
Exactly. It wouldn't even be an asterisk; it'd be an X. Not going to happen.
Exactly.
So yeah. But thank you for mentioning the 3-year. But So anyway, it's and I'm the first to tell you that I benefited from the freshman year. The last year of freshman not being eligible was 71, 72. That was my freshman year at IU. So we had a freshman team. We had, we played 12 games, but I needed it from a physical standpoint. However, knowing what I know now, and coach, that was his first year, and that team went through some ups and downs, and they had a bad January, and I know he would have played us. He would have played his boys, the guys he recruited. We would have gotten some time. Now, it may have scarred us for life. I don't know, because I know I wasn't ready. But at least I had that year, and I got my feet under me, and we played well, as a freshman, and then that helped me, have a leg up the next year.
Yeah. One question I've always been curious with a guy like you that had your career at Indiana, which was an outstanding career. And I mean, you played in Final Fours, you won Big Ten titles. But there's a group of guys, you've already named a few of them, the Van Arsdales, Jimmy Rail, you, Calvert Chaney, Alan Henderson, a lot of guys who played at Indiana at a school where ultimate success is measured in banners, and you never hung a banner, even though you're a member of the 75 team that people, think is one of the best team ever. I'm curious, when you look back on your career, does it feel like there's kind of a big gaping hole there of something you didn't achieve? Does it feel like there's unfinished business, or do you not really look at it that way?
There's a yes and no to that. I will tell you this, that after my senior year in '75, when Scott did break his arm and we ended up 31-1, I remember thinking to myself, well, try to top that. And less than 12 months later, it was like Quinn and Scott go, "You mean this?" We went 32-0 and won the whole damn thing. And I was like, that was that. I was hoping maybe get a few years out of that season. But and the NCAA championship has become more and more because of television exposure. Remember, we didn't have ESPN. We didn't have. In fact, when I played we played it, but when I got introduced to the starting lineup in '73 in St. Louis for the Final Four, we were playing UCLA. I was reminded that hey, this is the first time you'll be on national TV. You had to get to the Final Four to be seen coast to coast, so everybody was kind of, I was saying secret highs to all my buddies. I was touching my, coach and I probably were like, yeah, that's why you played like crap, because you were focused on the wrong things, and it was the one game. I'll tell you, in my 3 years, that was the one game that I can tell you I was totally intimidated, totally scared. And it's one of the reasons I used to, I got a UCLA shirt after that to remind me to never be scared of anybody like that again. Don't ever, you're not helping yourself at all. But that's the only shirt I ever wore other than an IU shirt was UCLA. And that was just, that was self-inflicted harm on me. It's like the reminder that don't ever do that to yourself again. Don't ever play scared.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that I did when I posted this is I gave our audience members a chance to ask questions. So I want to get to some of their questions, give you a chance to answer those. And we'll actually start out with one. This is going back to the UCLA games. This is from Lee. He says, early in Coach Knight's career in 1973 is your first season. IU faced UCLA in the NCAAs. Steve Downing and the UCLA center collided and Downing fouled out. I think IU was strong enough to have hung another banner with that team. Was IU that good?
We had gotten that good. Now, keep in mind that the week before we got there, we won the Mid-East Regional by beating Marquette, who was, Coach McGuire, and they had some studs, Maurice Lucas. They had some really, really good Marquette team. We upset them. And then we played Kentucky for the right to go to the Final Four. And Kentucky, both of those were teams ranked ahead of us, but we were gaining momentum as we moved along. We started to really be able to use Downing the way he was supposed to be used. And the motion offense was starting to really click in, and we played good defense and all that. But yeah, that foul call, if it goes the other way, and we were competing at that time. There's no question about it. And then, then 2 nights later, UCLA destroyed Memphis State. And, I think we would have, competed well against them too. And in those days, by the way, there was a 3rd place game. So our season wasn't over. And let me tell you something, this is how naive I was too. Okay, we lose to the number 1 team in the land, UCLA. So, okay, we did our best. It was a bad call. We could have beat them, blah, blah, blah. Well, now, we're easy street. All we have to do now is play a consolation game. Well, the next day in film session, who goes off? I mean, the old coach just goes off on us. Like, I can't believe we played that way. Blah. We're watching some film and we're getting ready for Monday. And he was like, if we don't win that game Monday, this is a total disaster. And I was like, oh my God, we're in the we're in the Final Four, coach. And it's like, yeah, I know, but we didn't play well. We didn't play our best, and we're going to play. And we beat Providence in the consolation game. That was, that was just self-preservation. We did not want to go through an off season again, with a loss hanging over our head.
Well, it seems indicative of what made Coach Knight so great. Because right before you started telling that, I was going to ask you, how do you get up for a consolation game like that? There you go.
There you go. Well,
I'm sure he understood that.
Yeah, it's just, there was a certain, because here I am a sophomore, and 2 years earlier, I'm watching the Final Four. It's like what happens now. You see it now with freshmen. The year before they're in high school, and then now they're the star of a Final Four game or something like that. We saw a couple of freshmen this year, but so back then, it was an accomplishment to get to the Final Four, but not to Coach Knight. Hey, he played on teams that got there. They won 1 championship. They were there a couple of times, and no. You play to win, you come to win. And now I will tell you this, and this is what I think Woody, and we'll get off, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Woody, but Woody knows this too. Coach was always about the Big Ten, always. Yeah. And in those days, you had to win the Big Ten to even get to the NCAA tournament. So that's one of it. But it was more about pride, winning the Big Ten. And if you took care of yourself and won the Big Ten or competed for the Big Ten championship, you were ready to go. To in postseason. So I think we're going to get back to that, the importance of winning Big Ten games, also winning games against arch rivals and things of this nature. And there's only one arch rival that I think we need a little catching up to do. And let me tell you, Woody knows. I mean, that's what I love about Woody, and Dane Five knows too, obviously, but Woody knows. We gotta make that not more competitive. We just got to make it more one's lopsided, with us.
We need to restore the natural order of things.
Thank you. That's the way to put it. But anyway, so that's
so okay. But let me ask you a question about that, because that's always interesting. It seems like a delicate balance to me, because it's just one game on the schedule. It counts as one game in the standings, and yet it's Purdue, and a win or a loss has an outsized impact. Yeah. So how did Coach Knight get you to properly focus on that game? Because the reality is it does mean more. There's an extra intensity, but not overdo it to the point where, maybe you lose the game before and the game after because you're so focused on this one game.
Yeah. And I don't know. Part of it, and maybe some of the things we've been missing, part of it is having Indiana players. I mean, people, that on both teams. Purdue, had a number of guys that I knew in high school, and we didn't have AAU basketball, so we knew each other by reputation or on the all-star team together. But there were, guys that knew what, IU Purdue rivalry was supposed to mean. So that helped. We were always up to beat other Hoosiers, that they happened to play for Purdue, but they still were from the state of Indiana primarily. So there was that, and we couldn't afford to lose any games in the Big Ten. My sophomore year, Minnesota was the favorite and had just won it the year before, and we had great competition, in our junior and senior years. We had, some, really good teams that we had to beat: Michigan, Purdue. So, it was another game, but let me tell you, there's nothing like Assembly Hall when Purdue walks in, right? And there ain't nothing like, I've never loved being hated so much than going into Mackey. It's like, bring it on. Yeah. Hate me more. And those rims, I'm telling you, for a shooter, and Brian and I have talked, are huge. It's a perfect background. They dim the lights, and I go, good. Thank you. Whoever's in charge of the lights, dim those things, because now all I see is the rim. And just to be hated that much is also something that you make sure that, I think this is an important game. So yeah, we got up for it, but don't get me wrong. I think even Coach Knight, his first year was, had a little bit of learning to see that's takes on special significance. Yes, it is one game. Yes, you can lose to Purdue and still win the Big Ten. You can still do it like we did my sophomore year. We lost up there, which was horrible. Never to happen again for a long time. And then, but somehow we knew, we knew it was special. But you got to remember too, the dude's an Ohio State grad, and Ohio State was really good my sophomore year, and then again in my junior year. And I was on a roast once, and with roasting Coach Knight, and I said, the guys on our team, I said, the week of the Ohio State game, he would get amped up. He would never admit to it. It was just another game, but he was amped up. It was, it put extra pressure on us. And I said, I never wanted a guy to be a graduate of Northwestern so much in my life than that week, because we could beat Northwestern with our hands tied behind our back, but not Ohio State. And we lost to them 2 times, over there in Columbus. It was not until we were the number 1 team in America did we ever beat them in my time there at Columbus. But that's it.
I'm curious with Coach Knight. It has to be such an interesting relationship when you're a player there, because he's kind of the taskmaster. He's, the head man. And, we've all heard the stories about how tough it is to play for him. And there's some intimidation and some fear involved in all of that. How does your relationship evolve with him then after you graduate? Because obviously you're close with him now, and I'm sure it's more jovial and more like a peer. How long does that take? What is that process like after you leave playing for him?
And you're right. It is a process, and it's. I was fortunate in a way that my father was a basketball coach, so and we all, our fathers and sons, they grow into different relationships. But I also was, that was my high school coach, and I was just kind of when I finished at IU, I was on the to play professionally, and it was a different time, and it was almost one of those, hey, now I'm out on my own. I'm going to find out how good I really was with or without him. And we all made. I told him every IU player that ever played for Coach Knight should have a gag rule for at least 5 years, if not 10 years after you graduate, because you think that, you know what, I don't think it was just his coaching. I think it was me. And I know I had that attitude so wrong. It's almost criminal. But I remember having that attitude, like, no. But then you just like with your parents, gosh, they aren't as stupid as I thought they were. Yeah. Well, we over time, that relationship with him, I'd never had that with anybody else. Even with my father, and my father and Coach and I were good buds. So they like I said, they both agreed that I was the laziest player to ever walk the face of the earth. So that's a great thing to agree. Your dad going, yep, you're right. Yeah, he doesn't work very hard. Like
most parents call concerned when Coach is getting on him. Your dad calls to laugh with him.
Oh, he said, oh yeah, Steve sucked. Yeah, it was terrible. But those two is like, thanks. But nonetheless, no, it grew. And I had an interesting, I was telling Brian this, and he just couldn't believe it. After my senior year, I kind of more or less moved in with Coach Knight before the drafts, before the NBA and the ABA draft. And, he was kind of my confidant. We were talking about who's going to draft me and that kind of thing. And he helped, with my first contract, and Brian's like, wow. What? And I go, oh yeah, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, whatever you think. And Coach Knight used to tell the story that, that he called my dad and said, hey, Steve's going to sign, with Utah. And we got him this. And my dad goes, what? How much? He goes, no, really, Bob, how much? You're joking. He was like, no, we got him. My dad thought, God, that's the greatest man I've ever met. Bob and I got my son some money that, way beyond he should have gotten. So they agreed, they disagreed on that. But anyway, that was a different time. But as time went on, especially when Coach, it was interesting when Coach went to Texas Tech. That was my coach. Everybody said, well, you graduated from IU. That's your alma mater. I agree with all that, but that's my coach. And I was loyal to Coach. And I said, no, I'm going to, go down and visit him down there, and went down several times and down there. I got to know him more and more as a guy that, we'd just go out and have something to eat and talk. And that's, but I was older then, and so was he. So it turned into, where I know I can, I trust him as a dear friend.
Hey, a lot of us became Texas Tech fans. I remember that first Christmas after he went there. I got a bunch of Texas Tech gear from my parents. They knew.
Man, it was wild. I was, wearing that around too. I was like, hey, yeah, but but that was bittersweet, as we all know. I know where I wanted him to be. Geez, and then it was also, that life lesson of, appreciate what you have when you have it, because it may not always be there. And I was one of those that, hey, he's been there 29 years. Of course he's going to be there forever. And it just, didn't happen.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning of your relationship with Coach Knight. And this question came in from Tom. He wants to know, what did Coach Knight say to you during recruiting, and what about his pitch convinced you to join him at IU? Because as you've told the story many times, you were being recruited by a lot of people, and you were thoroughly enjoying the recruiting process. Absolutely. So what did Coach Knight say to end that in Indiana's favor?
Yeah, I do scratch my head on that, because, man, I that was the days. This wasn't Damon Bailey in the 8th grade, hey, we're recruiting this kid. It was like, no, we seniors, we're milking this, we're taking trips and everybody wanted to go to be recruited by Hawaii, and they were smart enough. Go, no, not so fast. But every place else, I was Florida, I was an SEC, kind of a fan of the SEC because I was Southern Indiana. And again, TV, we didn't have ESPN. I, could barely see Channel 4. So I watched Pistol Pete, watched Johnny Newman. I was an SEC guy. So, and then Kentucky got real interested. And so, but when Coach came in, you got to remember that was April of my senior year. So usually, nowadays, gosh, guys have committed 2 years prior. Well, nobody committed. So, he kind of started at the top of Indiana, came all the way down, just talking to everybody that they hadn't signed the papers yet. And Mike Flynn, who was Mr. Basketball that year and played at Jeffersonville and was my rival in high school, and I were the last two guys that Coach talked to. And my dad, was a high school coach at Silver Creek, and he gets me out of study hall and said, "Hey, the new coach of Indiana's here to talk to you." And he told me, and this is true, it's kind of corny, but he said, "And I want you to listen to him." And my dad had never said that about, Joe B. Hall from Kentucky or, anybody else. It's like, listen to it. Well, they'd already talked, probably already agreed. Well, Steve's really lazy, so keep that in mind. Okay, that's one thing, but I think he can be a pretty good ball player. I think they both kind of agreed on that, but Coach didn't have any. I don't even know if he had seen film on me or they just heard, hey, these, here are the top 15 players and you might as well talk to them. But he just laid out, he just talked about it. Here's my goal. By the time you're a senior, I want to be in a position to compete for a national championship. That was the goal. 4 years. I mean, the man is,
worked out pretty well.
Yeah, he did pretty well. And he even to the point where he had looked ahead and he said, he knew he was going to have Downing as a center for 2 years. And here I'm still a senior in high school. I haven't even set foot on campus yet. And he's talking about who we're going to replace Downing with. He said, we'll need a center by then. So we'll have to, identify somebody, but everything else will be in place by the time we're there. And of course, in a couple of years, we got Kent Benson, become the center. When I was a junior, Benny was a freshman. So yeah, that year we prepped ourselves for a national championship run. My senior year, guy was right on the money. I mean, but he just matter of factly said, he'd been in the Big Ten, he'd studied, he'd been at Ohio State. The one thing that is kind of comical, I remember him saying, talking about being the first to sign on the dotted line. And he said, the first player that signed for Fred Taylor at Ohio State, don't you? And I go, no. He goes, Jerry Lucas, all-time great, one of coaches, a great player.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you inferring me? Am I going to, and it was almost like the inference was, you sign here and that's going to be a big deal. And I remember signing, and then I was waiting for this, like the front page of the Indianapolis Star to announce that Steve Green of all people, and there was this little, nub in the Star. Hey, Steve Green signs at IU, big deal, and I go, hey, where's the Jerry Lucas treatment? And then come to know Coach later is like, you haven't earned anything. In fact, that does remind me of my favorite Coach Knight story early on was my class was John Kamstra, Steve Allfeld, Doug Allen, John Laskowski, and myself, and a couple of guys that left during the year. So we had 7 guys, but 5 of us. And so the first day on campus, Kamstra and Allfeld and I say, hey, let's go shoot some hoops, Oh, good. So we just walked over in our street clothes to Coach Knight's office. And at that time, Assembly Hall wasn't finished. So it was in the old place. And we sat down, 3 of us, like two, the green asses we were, like, hey, Coach, here are your star recruits. We're here and we'd like to play some basketball. And he goes, well, good. And so, where do we go to get our gear? And he looked at us and he goes, what gear? And he goes, well, to play ball. And he goes, well, I hope you guys brought shoes and stuff because you haven't done a whole hell of a lot for this university yet. And that was like, that's classic Bob. No, we're not giving you anything. You haven't given us anything. Oh, you signed here? Bravo. But so we marched back across the street to McNutt, got our gear and came and shot around, but with our tails between our legs. It was like, no, and that was always this thing. You haven't done a whole hell of a lot for this university yet. And he was right. We hadn't earned anything.
Man, you juxtapose that story with the way that recruiting goes today. And obviously it's a lot different. And you could never go back to that. Like the cat's out of the bag. But do you think that something has been lost with the way that things are now and then how different it is from that story that you just told?
We talk about something, entitlement, and that's the thing that I always, I think I was fortunate in many ways that when I went to Indiana and when Coach came in and we were on this 4-year building process, we were building something right together. We had this goal. So we hadn't earned much of anything, in IU basketball up to that point. I think the last time was 67. They won a Big Ten championship. And here we are. It seems like, what back then I thought that was like, well, that was when they still had peach baskets. It was only like 6 or 7 years prior, but it was long enough that, hey, we need to win, and we haven't done it yet. So I always felt fortunate that we built that. So I never felt entitled to anything and felt like we had done some of those things. I remember telling Coach Knight, even near the end of his time there, was like, Coach, I think you got some players, here in the last few years that are coming here, and their expectation is, hey, now that I'm here, you, Bob Knight, you make me a winner. You make me a national championship. You're the guy. And back then it was, no, we are going to, as a team, we got to work together. And so we lost a little of that. Hey, no, I'm coming here. And now I think this, I'm going to this school because that gets me to the NBA. I don't think any of us went to IU thinking, well, if we do really well here, it's the next step is the NBA. It's like, no, we're here. We got a scholarship. And let's win as many ball games as we can. Let's be as good as we can. I mean, we're not going to try to lose games, but the goal was to win games for Indiana University. That's it. It was not anything above and beyond that. And we didn't feel entitled to anything. Now, I'll say after a couple of years of winning a whole bunch of ball games, I did expect to get my gear, my shoes and my warm-ups.
Well, you'd earned it by then.
I think I earned it by then, but I wasn't sure. But and what I wasn't given, we all took anyway. So Red Grow and Warren McGuire were the two equipment guys that we all loved. But it was like, hey, Warren, look over there. Oh, hey, look, another jersey going. I'll be damned.
This is an interesting topic as we talk about Coach Woodson. And Valerie asked a question about how you feel about Mike Woodson and the crew at the helm of IU basketball. I want to get your thoughts on that, but maybe we can frame it this way. Everything that you just said, I think we all agree. Like some of the guys in the later night years, it did kind of feel like there was a sense of entitlement. And I think people have felt that way with Indiana players, even of recent years, that it does kind of feel like that you come to Indiana and there's this big tradition, you're hanging banners. It's what can Indiana basketball do for me? But, now you kind of look at the recruiting pitches that Mike Woodson is giving, and he's talking to these guys and he's selling his NBA experience and how he's going to help guys prepare for the NBA and different things. How do you think Mike is going to navigate that and try to get back to having guys who are there to give their best to Indiana, but also balance, players today are also expecting you to do things for them.
Right. And I wouldn't, wouldn't want to represent that. I know what's in Woody's head, but I know he's not that far removed from when I played, so he's kind of old school that way. And Woody will chew their butt. I'll guarantee you that. And he'll do something too that I didn't see a lot of in the last 20 years. And that's using the bench the way Coach Knight used the bench. Hey, you're not playing well. I don't care who you are. Oh, well, you're a 5-star recruit. Oh, well, then please sit down. I'll be polite to you, but you're sitting down, right? Hey, you're still sitting down and you're going to watch this stuff. You're not
5 stars
playing.
Get the please treatment.
Oh, the please treatment. That's the entitlement they are. But you're still
funny.
On the bench. And, and the coach's own thing was how the butt talked to the brain. You sit on the bench long enough, the butt says, I don't like it over here. What does he want me to do? Woody will do that. Absolutely. Plus Woody can say, hey, I've been there, done that. And it reminds me of when Larry Bird took over the Pacers. Larry hired the best offensive coach he knew, Carlisle. Dick Harder was the best defensive coach. He said, no, you guys handle that. What Larry did was, I'm going to walk in with all my NBA championship rings and say, hey, pay attention. You want one of these? Pay attention to the three of us. And that was it. I think Woody's like, hey, you want to be all Big Ten, you want to win some games, you want to go to the NBA, pay attention. And very honestly, I think, one of his first people to pay attention is Trace Jackson Davis. Even he said, I didn't like everything he said, but I understood it. I think Woody may have said, hey, you want to play in the NBA? Hang around, next year. And if it takes even 2 years, hang around, get ready for it, and I'll help you get ready for that. In addition to what we're really going to do, and it should be as a byproduct of what we're going to do. And that's Woody. It's like, we're going to win. And that's what happened with me. I mean, I didn't show up. I'm not a first round draft pick of anybody. but you know what? I played on championship teams, and people, I got noticed. It's like, hey, I think he knows how to win. He can't play defense for crap, but you know what? He shoots pretty good. So, but he's been on a winning team, and so I got to the next level because of team stuff, not because of being an individual star player. And I think we're going to see a lot more of team wins, championships, and the guys are still going to get to the next level that need to get to the next level. The guys are going to get all Big Ten. That because they're going to be looked at as part of a winning team, and I think that's going to be a big deal. And Woody will get that across. No, he's a great communicator, great dude, great, absolutely, and he got great people around him now. I mean, Scott, Dolson did a wonderful thing here. I think we just all scratched our heads. Leading up to it, I mean, we were all over the place. I just didn't think Woody would come back for this, but you know what? I'd forgotten how much he loves Indiana University, loves it, and loves what it did for him. So I had, I didn't give that enough credit, to tell you the truth.
As a fan base, we've spent however long it's been since he was hired, a month plus, kind of marinating in the enthusiasm of it and the feel good vibes and everything. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of reason to believe that this is going to work based on what you know of Woody and his disposition and kind of the way that he does things, and also kind of his experience and the positives of his experience, but also the holes of his experience, like not having college coaching. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for him? Or if there's something that doesn't go quite right, like we're expecting, what do you think that would be?
Well, before I saw who he was adding as a staff, it would, we would talk about things like, gosh, how do you go about recruiting after you've been in the NBA as long as you have? How do you talk to 17, 18, and 19-year-old kids, about what the opportunity is here? And so, and I don't know. I mean, he may have said that's where I think I might be a little weak. So who can I put? Who else can we bring in here? And it's like, well, I don't know. How about the guy that won 3 Big Ten Coach of the Years at Ohio State? That's a good guy. How about the guy that's sat to the left or to the right of Tom Izzo for you? I don't know. That's a good guy. How about the other guys that are here? So I think he's kind of, he's not going to coach by committee. I don't think that's it at all. But he's going to be able to tell them about his experience at IU. I mean, that is real. And yes, Woody's one of those guys. I mean, he went in that 4-year period. Let's talk about, they win a national championship and then they win a national championship bookends, and he doesn't play, in either one of them, his 4 years, but one of the great IU players of all time, one of the great teammates of all time, but so he can talk about those things. What does it take to achieve the level that he got individually, but also team wins? And he's very, very close with Coach Knight through all those years. So he celebrated all those championships. So I think he's got a lot to draw on. But also I think he's gotten into guys' faces in the pros that, he's not going to have any trouble with a 19-year-old kid's kind of talking back to him and saying, well, I don't think that's important. Oh, really? You don't think it's important? Oh, okay. Well, may I invite you to sit over, sit the same place the 5-star guy just sat down. So I don't know.
We pulled a bunch of audio clips of Mike Woodson that we use on our show from these New York Knicks practices that he had.
I heard you say one word. You would never get your shot off on me.
Where he's basically he's talking to the NBA guys like that.
Absolutely. You never have a problem. Yeah, and I haven't been around Woody like so many of the guys like Witt and Kitch and other guys have known him way better, and Quinn and Isaiah. I mean, it just goes on and on that who love Woody, but just times being around him, he's kind of guy quick with a joke, but you throw him things like, hey, this player was really good. He'll look at you like, that guy couldn't hold, I'd get 50 on him, and say it in a way that's not, it's brag, but it's backed up. It's like, you know what? I bet he would get 50 on that guy, but
yeah,
but so he understands, he appreciates talent. So he'll be able to, he'll figure it out.
Let's go back to your playing days for a question. This one comes from Karen. So she says, in the 75 regional final loss to Kentucky in overtime, were you hit with the technical in the second half? She says, I'm sure the ref had lost his mind. Can you share what happened there?
The answer is yes. It was a horribly refereed game. I mean, we all agreed. I had referees that I talked to later said, "Oh my God, that was what they let go," because we were just getting beat out of us. I mean, physically. And that was the game plan. I mean, that was Kentucky's game plan. It's like, we have more players than they do. And Scott's not, Scott started, but he was ineffective. So they knew, it's all right, we got plenty of players. Let's just use all they were going to use 15 fouls on Benson. And then Bob Guyette was the guy guarding me, and he was going to take me out one way or the other, and he was beating the heck out of me. Of course, I was yelling at him on the way down the court. I said, "There's another 2 in your face," because I loved playing against Kentucky. I loved it, and so, I hit them for 15 or 16 in the first half. Said, "Yes, we're going to kick your ass," but they just kept coming at us in waves. In the second half, it was not to our liking, but yeah, at some point I got called for a foul underneath our hoop, as a matter of fact. And I don't know how many minutes were left, but the referee stuck his hand, to call a foul on me right in my nose. And it was like, nah. And in the moment, I swatted his hand away, and that was technical city, right?
Oh man.
And
what are you supposed to do? Just sit there and let the guy touch your nose?
And so anyway, but the funny thing was, that was my second technical in my IU career. The first technical I got was the first time any player that coach had ever coached ever got a technical. This is the guy that gets all the technicals. And I remember that one way more than that. Well, I remember both of them pretty much. But the first one was the year before in the CCA tournament. For you folks that are real historians, we tied for the Big Ten championship. We had a playoff game with Michigan, and only one team got to go to the NCAA. In today's basketball, we probably would be a number 2 seed at worst, in the tournament. But instead, we go to this stupid CCA tournament for all second place finishers, and the university presidents had decided this. So we go out to St. Louis, where we were the year before for the 73 Final Four. It is packed. We go out for this stupid thing, and I could hear my mom and my aunt talking about where they're going to eat later that day, while I'm warming up. I'm like, damn, this sucks. So we play really good teams. So the final game was against USC. They had a couple of really good players, and coach got thrown out in the first half. He got tossed. We were getting, and they were whipping us pretty good at that time. And so, and it was, it was a ragtag kind of thing. And close to the end of the first half, I got a technical. I mean, I mouthed off because, I said, "Hey, coach is gone, and this is the last game of the season, and I'm feeling my and I'd had a great tournament up to that point, and everything was going, and I mouthed off, technical, no big deal. Who's waiting for me as I'm running off the court for the halftime? Who's waiting there? It's the man, Coach Knight, and he gives me hell. What are you doing getting a technical? Nobody gets a technical place, man. I go, you're telling me not to get you're thrown out of the game. You're not even here. You're not even coaching. You're not even supposed to talk to me. I'm thinking to myself, of course, I'm not going to say that to him, but that's when I learned. It goes, no, you're the first guy that's ever done that. And, it's like, shame on you. And I was like, well, wait till next year. And then my last game, I'm going to do it again.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah. That is funny. Okay, here's a good question from Patrick. When did your teams typically know if they would be good? Off-season workouts, official practices, or did it take getting into the season and playing a few games to know?
That's a great question. The easiest was obviously going into 74, 75, my senior year. We knew. I mean, we knew from the end of last year we won the CCA tournament, and we had everybody back. Because we had no seniors on the 74 team. So everybody was back, so I was a senior on the 75 Laz, Offie and Camster. So we knew then, in fact, to the degree where after the first practice, I got everybody together, all just players at the center court. We finished our first practice, and I looked at everybody and said, "Hey, we've been around that guy long enough. We know what we have to do this year. To please him, we got to win every game." And it wasn't a false promise. You know that, right? And everybody's like, "Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want him chewing my butt. I don't want any of this, because we'd lost some games in the previous 2 years. That's the only way he'll be happy. Little did we know, no, that wasn't going to make him all, happy every day, because we had some bad games that we won. But the year before was kind of we actually, we traveled after the Final Four year, because the Final Four year, we started out, it was his first, it was his second year, my first year on the varsity, and they had been to the NIT the year before. And I think until we got into the Big Ten, we really didn't know how good we could be until we started beating Minnesota. We beat them at home. But then we lose Downing, we lose John Ritter, and now we're coming back with no seniors, but Coach had planned one of these trips. We went to Spain. So all the guys, we got to play together we got to practice for a week, and then we got to play for 2 or 3 weeks over there. And you could start to see, and we were playing, and here's the thing, we were beating some teams, but Quinn didn't go. He was playing on a national team. Scotty and Scott May and Bobby Wilkerson weren't eligible to play.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't have Benson. Did Benny go with us? Yeah, gosh, I can think of at 73. No, he wasn't there. He was incoming. So we had 4 of the starters not there.
Yeah.
But we were beating teams, Plus, I have to admit that the score, since those 4 were not, I was the scorer. It's like, this is going to be a really good team, because I know one thing. Yeah, as long as I'm the scorer, this is going to be really good. But we had a confidence, like, gosh, and then you add those guys into the first day of practice. Oh yeah, we got to feeling pretty good that year. But then we had some losses that we just scratch our heads and say, how did we even lose those games? But we won the Big Ten that year, but tied for it with we lost the first Big Ten game of the year at Michigan, and then we tied them with a 12-2 records, both of us. But we had the cool thing about that is to win the Big Ten, or to tie them for the Big Ten championship, which would be 2 in a row. And this was Coach's big deal: win the Big Ten championship, but it's even tougher to win it twice, in a row. And so we had Purdue at home, and man, we won that game, and the crowd came down, and Coach and I remember Coach yelling, we were yelling at each other's ear, we did it, we won another Big Ten championship. That was huge for us. But that's kind of where we felt like we were, really a good program, and everybody was back for the next year. So that was pretty easy.
So I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed to admit this. When I was growing up, I was born in 81. So I kind of came of age in the late 80s, early 90s. So I'd always kind of heard the legends of the 75 and 76 team, but I wasn't there to watch them. And so I always just assumed that you and Laz were part of the 76 team.
Yeah.
Because, I was like, well, okay, the 76 team is the best. So clearly all these guys must have been on that team. And I don't remember exactly when it was, but I remember being shocked when I kind of looked back and I was like, wait, Green and Laskowski weren't on the 76 team. Do you have a lot of people that are surprised that you weren't on the 76?
Oh, yeah. To the point where it was like, I didn't correct him after a while. I was like, hey, man, that's an easy one. But I tell you, and I'll tell you about the guy, the character of the guys on the 76 team. They consider it kind of a 75, 76 team, win. But, that's very gracious of them. But I will tell you this, that we had, it was about 3 or 4 years ago. There were some guys, Laz and myself with Tommy Abernathy, Quinn, and Jimmy Cruz. We were on kind of a panel discussion, and that came up. Somebody said, hey, what was better, 75 or 76? Quinn said 75. I was like, dude, that's nice. He goes, I'm not being nice. And as he started talking, it was the first time I'd always felt bad. Gosh, we got beat by Kentucky. We beat them by 35, during the year. And I hate those guys anyway. And they beat us by 2. But I forgot, Scott was 20 points a game. You don't lose 20 points. And it was like, hey, the 76 team was better than the 75 because during the tournament, we had Scott and you guys didn't. Plain and simple. If we had Scott, we were rolling people. I mean, we were just,
Yeah.
I mean, we were, we were killing them by, 10 minutes to go in the game. We were done. And with Scott, I mean, it's a different thing. So it kind of made me think, we're probably pretty good in 75. And because with a healthy Scott, it would have been 2 in a row. That's for sure. Yeah, I don't know if it would have been undefeated, the second year, who knows, but they certainly were on a mission that time. And also, the 76, there was a Showtime thing on the 76 team, right?
Yeah.
And I get a call from the producer from this Showtime, and he goes, "Hey, I've been told I got to interview you." It's like, I got to interview. And I go, "Well, you don't have to interview. What are you doing? We're doing this 76 thing." I said, "What do you want to interview me?" He goes, "Every one of the guys said you've got to interview Laskowski and Green. They're on the team." It's like, I mean, they're having
that's
this
cool.
whole thing, and they're the ones that told them. And he goes, and guess what the guy said? He goes, "I didn't realize you guys were," it's like the same thing you said. I really, and so we went and we were interviewed only because those guys said, "Nah, if you're doing this, do it right." And it was a 2-year process. So, my hat's off to them. I hope I would have been that, that gracious.
When you guys get together and there's like guys from the 75 team and maybe guys from the 80 team and guys from the 92 and 93 teams, which are kind of like these missing banner teams, where it's like, gosh, those teams were good enough to win it all. Do you guys ever kind of talk about that and lament, like, man, if Allen hadn't gotten hurt, if Scott hadn't gotten hurt, if Ted Valentine hadn't been a jackass, like, these could have won titles.
Absolutely. And of course, Brian brings me in on the history of that, with him being 20 years younger than me, that, that we talk about those things. Man, how good I was there, when with Allen and Calvert and those guys, geez, I mean, those
teams were awesome.
Awesome. I mean, absolutely awesome. So, and one of the great things that happened when we decided to start raising money for IU for basketball scholarships, we had golf tournaments. And of course, the biggest draw we had was Bob Knight, right? He was going to be there Friday and Saturday. And so, by doing that, that was the first time guys from the early 70s got together with guys from the mid 80s. And, that's where I got to know Randy Whitman a lot better, Ted Kitchell a lot better, because we'd play golf, and then we'd have a few beers afterwards, and we just would tell stories. And I remember the the guys that were there the first 4 or 5 years would sit there and go, "You're kidding me." But their stories were way better than our stories, And Jimmy Cruz told me this one day. I said, "Gosh, what happened?" He goes, because he was, assistant coach for a lot of those teams. And some of this crazy stuff that he would say to players to motivate them and all that. Yeah. And he said, "Well, gosh, Green, you got to remember, we didn't lose. There wasn't anything for him to get upset about. We're losing 8 to 10 games a year. Coach is going nuts. He can't, we don't do this. We don't lose 8 games in a year. We don't lose, 4 games. Yeah. We don't lose to Purdue, So there was some craziness afterwards, because we were kind of like, we had it easy because we won. We won games, so we didn't get the wrath. So to hear those stories, we would just laugh. So that can't be true. It's true. But so we got to know all those guys. And everybody really does appreciate, hey, you know what? Whether you were on a championship team or not, it becomes a bigger deal to the general public, than it does to us. It was more that we do take great pride in. Yes, we played for Bob Knight, and it's one of the things that I didn't have to wonder about Brian Evans. I wonder what kind of guy he's going to be to partner with. I know. I mean, I knew he was not a 5-star recruit when he came from Terre Haute South. he was an afterthought. He tells a story. And then 5 years later, he's the Big Ten most valuable player, right? So I know the guy can work, and I know he can take heat, and I know he wasn't coddled. Hey, you talk about entitlement. He wasn't entitled to anything, and then just said, "No, I'll be the #1 player in the whole freaking conference." And it's like, that's the guy I want on my team. Yeah, somebody had to work that hard.
One of the great player development stories in the history of IU basketball.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it. Who are some of your other favorite players that you've watched since you've graduated? Just when you sit down and you've watched IU games that you've just thoroughly enjoyed watching them play.
Well, sorry, this always goes back to Laz and I were interviewed one time. I forget. In fact, I think it was 92 or 93. We were following the team, and somebody said, "Well, gosh, is Calvert Chaney the best player that you ever saw play?" And I go, and I did. I looked in the camera. I go, "Well, I didn't see myself play, so yeah, he was." So obvious BS, but yeah, Calvert Chaney's right up there. I mean, come on, that stroke of his. Speaking of a guy, guess where Brian Evans may have ended up had he not gone to IU? Evansville.
Mm-hmm.
Calvert, Evansville. I mean, Jimmy Cruz is like, hey, you guys would have been in our Hall of Fame a lot sooner than the IU Hall of Fame. You would have played for me. But and Brian was one of my favorite players. He just was. I mean, I just, not only shooting, but, and not only the number, I make fun of that, but just the way he played. And, Steve offered, because, he was a little kid when his dad was coach at Martinsville. When Sam was coach there, he'd bring Stevie to practice. We just Dutch rub him, and he was a pest. There's that little kid again. Only to we were Dutch rubbing the man. We didn't know that he was. When he moved to Newcastle and came back. So guys like that. No, they're all. It's interesting. I don't look at those guys though the same way I look at the Vans. I mean, I just don't. I mean,
it's just different. The guys that you fell in love with as a kid, exactly. It's different.
It's just different. I still can't. I'm sitting here going, I can't believe I've got Tom and Dick Van Arsdale's phone number, and they got mine. Why would they want mine? I'm only 8 years old. I'm still asking for autographs. But there've been great players through the years. Some I didn't get to see as much as other. I didn't get to see Woody play because I was playing. I was in the NBA, and we didn't have the games. I just would have to hear about it, and it was kind of unheard of for a guy that was playing professional ball to come back there. Even during the All-Star break, we only had 3 days, and nobody went back to their colleges like they do now. Guys show up everywhere, and I think I missed out on some of that. I should have gone and seen guys more often live, but now now I'm a fan. I've got my season tickets, and so I'm checking guys out. But it's we still gravitate towards those guys that play smart, play within the team concept, but also step up in big moments. It's just one of those things that you look for that in a guy, and we're going to look for that in this team too. Like who is the guy that has the confidence, that has learned enough in practice, learned enough in games, that he's going to step up and do some things. We need that kind of guy. I don't know who it's going to be. Everybody's a candidate right now, but it's going to be somebody that's going to prove to Coach Woodson and the coaching staff that I need to be out here during big minutes, and they'll find their way. So I'm anxious to look forward to this year. To tell you the truth, and
Trace Jackson Davis has certainly put himself in a position to be that guy. Because he could have gone and he believed in Coach Woodson and came back, and I knew as soon as he did that, I'm thinking, okay, this guy has a chance to kind of cement himself in Indiana history. With what he's already done through 2 years. I'm curious to get your thoughts on him, and he's been extremely productive for 2 years. He's also played on teams that haven't been as good, and he's kind of been force-fed the ball and had production. Like if he was playing on the 93 team, he's not featured like he is here.
Exactly.
What have been your thoughts on kind of his development and how he stacks up with some of the other great big men that you've seen at IU?
Yeah, and he has that potential. So there's no question about it. I mean, just has a look about him on the court. I will tell you this: you may not recognize his game in a year. Just more, or even 6 months from now. The way he's going to be asked to use his right hand, the way he's going to step out and shoot jumpers, the way he's going to get into post position and be fed, the way he's going to be fed, then back out to the shooters, back into him. I think that's his best days are ahead. I think that's easy for me to say, hey, it's good that you didn't jump to the NBA, but let's face it. He heard from a guy that just came from the NBA. It's not like Woody came in and said, hey, I'm going to make a few phone calls and tell you what the NBA is thinking. He knows what they're thinking. And I think he sat down and said, and here's what I think they're correct on. Here's what I think you can fix easily. Here's going to take some work. And it's going to take us to be a good team around you. We can't make you the only option. You can't. You just can't have that. That's unfair to him. But yeah, I think he's got a chance to be one of the best ever at that position. There's no question. But what's lacking right now is team success. Man, team success, it really solidifies you. Because guys can, we see guys all the time. Hey, Pistol Pete Maravich, one of my idols, averaged 44 a game for LSU. They never won squat, but he was fun to watch. But their team was not. That's an unusual, a star like that. But for most people, it's team play. Just like watching the Final Four this year. A lot of these guys got, they played great basketball under a big spotlight, and their teams did well. So those are good guys.
That gets underrated. Like the Juzang kid from UCLA, did not enter the NCAA tournament on people's radars. And then he goes out and has a 6-game stretch where he looks like Jay Edwards. And now everybody's thinking like, hey, this guy could be a first-round pick.
Oh, no question.
Having that kind of success on that platform.
No question. And let me tell you something too. My kids, when they were deciding whether to play, daughter at volleyball, in college, and son play, some mid-level basketball. But when they decided, that, hey, they're going to not do those kind of things, I told them, I said, but here's the deal. Don't you ever make fun, ever say anything bad about the 12th man on any Division I basketball team, really on any team, D1, 2, 3. Those guys will kick your ass in a minute. I mean, it is really interesting because I used to get challenged all the time at IU. My fraternity was like, okay, hey, now Green, it's off season. Let's play some 5-on-5. I said, I don't think you want any of this because you think you do. You think I'm slow, and you think you can jump and block but you don't want any part of this, and you don't want any part of the guy you're making fun of that doesn't get any playing time on our team, because he'll kick your butt up, one side. And what is it? Just happened that the Boston Celtic Scapellini I forget the
Scalabrini
thing. Yeah, right there.
I
saw that just recently, and I go, that's what I'm talking about. These guys are way better than you think, and they get better over time, and even on a bad team. But I'm telling you, watch out. There's some good. So in other words, there's a star yet to be born on IU's team. I'll guarantee, beyond Trace Jackson, I'll guarantee you there is. Oh, yeah. Given the right, the leadership, the right offense. Hey, I'm nobody. If I go, instead of going to Indiana, I go to Kentucky and it's like, hey, let's play some one-on-one. Like, I'm out. But you go to Indiana and coach says, no, I've got a motion offense and only the forwards and centers shoot. And I went, yeah. And you hear that, Quinn? You hear that, everybody? Shooter. And it was set up, shoot. And man, if you can't shoot coming off of picks and you're wide open, you got to go sit down. You got to say, I need to sit down. But, so I was set up to be successful. And Woody's going to do the same thing for some of these guys.
Steve, this has been awesome. I want to be respectful of your time. So just a couple more questions if you have time for them.
I do. Yeah.
You mentioned shooting. I have to ask you about shooting. I myself was a shooter back in the day in high school. That was kind of my only thing. Kind of wish I had played basketball 20 years later when the 3-point shot, when everybody was just firing up threes.
Me too, bud. Me too.
Yeah, would have been much better. But how frustrated have you been watching Indiana basketball the last few years? Kind of an easy question. Probably really frustrated with the shooting. Yep. What would, like, if Coach Woodson called you up and is like, Steve, you were a great shooter. What should I do to help these guys shoot better? Like, what are the keys you think to Indiana getting back to being a good shooting program again?
It's one of the key things, and again, Brian and I talked about this, why are we, and what's going to change? Confidence is so much a part of it. It's amazing. And it's tough as a freshman to get confident out there, especially if you're put in and basically like, hey, don't screw up. We can't afford that. So Woody's already said, I'm going to put guys in position so that they know that when I get that, it's okay to shoot and it's okay to miss. Now I got to admit, I never thought that it was okay for me to miss too many, that's for sure. But I was always put in a position that I knew that the offense was coming to me or coming to Scott May, and then we're going to throw it into Benson and him back out to us. So there is that, but it does take practice too, man. You gotta get out there and shoot a lot. I mean, and from all angles, and not just be I hate just just 3-point shooting and layups, right? I love the mid-range shot or the long shot. I'm sure. But yeah, you just have to put yourself in a position where, hey, I know my mechanics are good. I know the ball is coming to me, and I know that, I have enough confidence, and my coach has enough confidence in me that I can stroke this and they'll go in. Yeah. But I'm with you. It's like, I can't believe the shooting. I haven't believed it. Some of the guys, and I saw them in high school, and hey, you know what? I know it's high school, but you know what? Shooting, that's 10 foot, so just this confidence. And I know I had to gain confidence, but man, it doesn't. That's the lightning in a bottle. It's like, man, when you get a shooter that has confidence, whoops, watch out. Because now they're going in. Now they're going in.
That's right. That's right. So one more question here from Kathy. And, Indiana has a couple of really interesting freshmen coming in. Tamar Bates, who has been rising up the charts, known as a good shooter. Logan Duncombe, big man from Ohio, another guy who's really risen up the charts. Both are top 100 recruits. And Kathy wants to know if you could give an incoming freshman one piece of advice because it's something you wish you had done differently while in school, what would it be? And their experience will be a little different because they're going to be expected to play from day one.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
obviously weren't able to. But what advice would you give to those two guys?
Yeah, the thing I always worry about with freshman eligibility is this feeling that if you don't play a lot as a freshman, you're a failure of some sort. And that's what I would say is just, no, you go in, you come in. The coaches know you're a first-year player, okay? And they're going to get on you, but don't, take all the constructive criticism you can and just concentrate on getting better each and every day, gaining confidence and knowing that, I may be a lot better as a sophomore or junior here in this program. And, the one and done thing, I just, there's certain kids that, one and done, but everybody else should be thinking about what can I do to play well here, no matter if it's 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever that is. So early on, just know you're here for a reason. Mistakes are made, but still they're going to work with who we've got on the team. Just make sure you're the guy that does all the things that the coaches are asking. Please the coach. That's the other thing. Please the coach. All right. Don't please your mommy at home. Don't please your friends. Please the dude that's handing out time, because you're not going to play if that guy's not happy. So that's another thing. Not that I like I said, I was fortunate. I didn't have to. I got to. The other thing is, from an academic standpoint, man, sprint as soon as you get on campus, sprint to the first day of practice and get A pluses if you can, and then try to ride that out the rest of the semester because it's all going to be basketball. Then in the second semester, basketball is like, hang in there until the season's over, then sprint to the end. And, you better get A's in September and A's in April, to balance it out. Cause it's tough. That is tough, but use tutors, man. I use tutors all the time. Steve Offeld, Offie's an orthopedic surgeon. I'm a dentist. I'm not going to say we were the dumbest guys on the team, but we were smart about one thing. And that is tutors are free. Sign me up, tell me what I missed. And let's keep up with schoolwork. So that's a bunch of stuff. But I'd say the final thing is, if you're going to Bloomington, if you're going to IU, and you don't have a good time, that's on you. Whatever that means. Okay.
That is true.
Just don't let it going on forever.
Just don't let it interfere with your shooting work and the academics, all that stuff.
No,
be responsible.
Hey, man, I used to shoot with my girlfriend. She'd rebound and I'd shoot. So you can figure it out. Yeah, in fact, I credit that with coach playing me a lot because he caught me one day shooting. It was a football game and I was in the Oak, and I'm shooting, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was rebounding for me, and I think he caught me. And it was like, all right, it was just pure double, but
he's got it.
Yeah. I was like, hey, coach, all the time. Do it all the time. Yeah, in here every day. It's first and only time I'd done it. So
he's like, okay, Steve Green has this figured out.
Yeah, he's got it. Yeah, that's it. That guy, he's good. Yeah. Never again.
That's great. Well, Steve, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time. It's been so much fun chatting. Give us the website one more time for Aurora.
AuroraSleep.com. So ARORA sleep.com.
Sleep.com.
Yeah. And I don't know Brian's put his picture on there yet, but I'm on there. So I got one.
Well, cool. Well, good luck with everything. I hope to see you guys, do your world domination expansion down here to Dallas, and I'll be the first one through the door. But really appreciate your time. This is a lot of fun.
My pleasure. No, it's fun. Thank you, Jerod.
Cool. Thank you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, everybody. The great Steve Green. Holy smokes. That was 85 minutes of awesome storytelling. A lot of good stuff there from Steve. I wasn't able to get to all the questions that were submitted, but I wanted to try to get to the questions and then ask good follow-ups where it was possible. But really appreciate Karen and Tom and Patrick and Kathy and Lee and Valerie for submitting your questions. So we're going to do this same thing next week with Brian Evans. Now, there haven't been as many questions submitted for Brian. That is fine. If you guys don't submit questions and you're just going to let me hog all the time with one of my childhood heroes that I used to pretend to be growing up in my driveway, I will for sure do that. But if you do have questions that you want me to ask Brian, and again, a lot of the questions submitted today were awesome, go to the events page inside of the community, and you can go there and you can comment on that event page, and then I'll bring those questions on to the run sheet and kind of ask them as they fit into the conversation. But boy, really appreciate Steve Green taking the time. If you haven't listened to his interviews on Hoosier Hysterics and Podcast on the Brink, highly recommend that too. He has given IU fans like 8 hours of awesome content, which is so great. So anyway, thank you all for being here. If you are listening to this on the podcast or you're watching this on YouTube, the live broadcast, the live version of this was done inside the community. And we got folks like Ari and Barb and Erwin, John and Lisa, Lee, Phil, Rick, Tony, all here live. Others were here live. So if you want to, be able to watch these live, be able to get your questions in, go join the community at assemblycall.com/community. We'd sure love to have you. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Thank you, Steve Green. Thank you, everybody who was here. And we will talk to you guys soon. As always, keep your elbows in and your eye. Dang it, I should have gotten Steve. Okay, next time we do one of these, please, those of you who are here live, or if you're listening, you have to remind me to get the guest to do a drop of keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. I meant to do that with Steve Green, because who better to have do that than one of the best shooters in school history, and I forgot to put it on the run sheet, and then I get all, excited, and then I forget to do it. So please, if you're listening to this, if you're going to be here live, remind me to do that. I have to get it for Brian Evans. I'm going to go add it to my run sheet right now. Anyway, let's try this again. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. Talk to you guys soon.